right, well, let's get started. Welcome everybody. Hope your start to white label is going off well. I'm Brian Martinez. I'm the Vice President of Client Services at ChannelKey. But before we get into that, really quickly, what we're here to talk about today is building effective advertising campaigns and the right approach to building those successful campaigns that will ultimately lead you to sales growth on Amazon. So to really set the stage, I have a couple questions. So first question that I have, raise your hand if this applies to you, but how many of you believe that your advertising approach on Amazon can either improve or you're currently selling on Amazon but not advertising? So, all right, I see a couple of you. Perfect. So for those of you who are currently on Amazon, I'm curious how many of you are seeing competition increase either through ads or organically within the search results? Perfect. So again, before we get started, got a little bit of a pop quiz for everybody here. So we're looking at the term air fryers on Amazon. If you're on your desktop, you search this is roughly what you're gonna see. So just curious, if anybody knows how many non-paid, non-curated listings would show up on this search? Anybody? 0? It would be 16. So on the flip side of that, for paid advertising slots, how many do you think are gonna show up on page 1 of this? Any guesses? I know we don't have the full screenshot, but if we did, you would count 14. So basically 50% of the slots and placements that are showing up in this search term air fryers are paid placements. Let's do another search. So if we're taking a look at dog treats here, we're gonna see a little bit more search results. So any guess, any clue to how many search results that are non-paid you would find on dog treats? Anyone? 10? A little bit more. We're looking at 48 on dog treats. So what that shows you is that Amazon is choosing different search results and different number of results based on which term you're actually searching for, and that's that end consumer. So how many ads would you expect? There were 14 on the last one, so how many would you guess for 48? Higher? Definitely. But not as high as you would think. So here you're gonna see 18 different ad slots. So in total, 66 different slots that you're gonna have. What's unique though about this particular term, and changes for every single term, is what other placements can show up. So not only do you have 18 ad slots, but then you have curated sections such as editorial recommendations. Amazon now has a highly rated widget that's showing up in certain search terms, as well as the Amazon brands. So taking a look right here, we see WAG, and this is in a section or a specific placement that states featured from our Amazon brands. With all of that said, I'm gonna take a step back and gonna really kind of explain what I'm here to talk to you about today, as well as who I am and why my perspective can add value to your approach. So a little bit about my promise for you today is that I'm gonna walk you through the way that we think about approaching advertising strategies and creating advertising strategies on the Amazon Marketplace for the brands and manufacturers that we have helped operate on Amazon. So who am I? As I said, Brian Martinez, Vice President of ChannelKey. We're a full service channel management agency who helps brands that are not only getting going on the Amazon Marketplace, but also Fortune 100 brands. So we've powered over $750 million in total GMV and $20 million in ad spend through the entirety of our life. With all of that experience and knowledge, we have seen a lot. We've had a lot of successes, a lot of failures. So I'm hoping that with the information we're gonna cover today, you can learn a couple things, you can apply those to your businesses, and if you have any additional questions, always happy to chat afterwards. All right. Okay, so you may be saying, all right, well, when we looked at dog treats, the ad slots didn't really grow too much. So why does it matter that we're talking about ads? Why can't I just organically get there? Well, if we look at this chart, this is the number of Amazon sellers that have an account on Amazon over the past 4.5 years. Right now, Marketplace Pulse estimates 6.3 million sellers on Amazon. 1.5 million of those sellers are currently active, and that number continues to grow every single year. So while yes, placements may be sparse, they may be 50% of the results, the competition continues to grow. And that's very important to understand. So when we take a look at advertising, you say sellers are growing, but what about advertising? Amazon ads now contributes over $30 billion in revenue a year towards Amazon. So we expect that to continue to grow and to not change. So I'm going to take a second here. I have another question. By a show of hands, how many of you have seen your average CPC or cost per click increase on Amazon ads in the last 2 years? All right, you're not alone. Taking a look at PacView's most recent CPC report, year over year, the average cost per click has increased by 9.6% and is now well over $1. So that's looking at the past. You may be saying, Brian, what about the future? Well, let's take a look at our good old friend Facebook. Facebook, when they started their advertising in 2011, they're the blue line here, they saw explosive growth that is actually following Amazon's ad revenue line. So if we're saying, well, what does the future have for Amazon? Brian, why are you saying the future is going to continue to see increased competition, increased need for spend? You see it right here. Amazon's following Facebook. We don't expect that trend to go away. Amazon's leaning into their advertising options and releasing more and more different levers that you can pull, as well as different data that's influencing Amazon sellers to actually advertise further. So let's talk about the strategies and approaches that we have here at ChannelKey. The first, most critical step to any advertising strategy is you have to define your objectives. Why? Because if not, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall and you're seeing what sticks. You have no clue what your KPIs should be. You don't know which ads you should actually be placing against. So let's take a step back and take ourselves out of Amazon. Let's imagine that we're building a bridge. I know we're Amazon sellers, we're not building bridges. Let's imagine for a second. You wouldn't start building a bridge on each side and hope that you end up meeting in the middle. You would look at your starting point and you would look at where your end goals are. Well, in Amazon, it's very much the same when it comes to advertising. So when you're looking at your starting point, that's defining your objective and your goals. When you look at your end point, that's understanding what the results that you want to generate are and what the KPIs are that you're going to use to measure those results. So what metrics do you look for? And why does that matter? You're not always going to look at ACoS. You're not always going to look at ROAS. If you're building after awareness, ACoS is one of the last metrics that you're going to be focused on. Now, if you're going after conversions and profitability, ACoS is a strong argument to be a primary KPI. So there really are 4 key areas of the funnel that we like to focus on within Amazon, within our approaches to Amazon for brands. And those 4 different areas have different KPIs that all match towards those. So we're going to start at the top of the funnel. We're going to work our way down. But starting at the top, we're looking at awareness-driven campaigns. Awareness-driven campaigns really start to introduce your product and your brand to consumers who are not necessarily yet ready to start purchasing. Think about when you're sitting at home, you're watching TV, you see an advertisement come up or a commercial come up for a brand that you've never heard of. Well, all of a sudden you have a little bit of validation being added to that brand because it's like, hey, if they're on TV, hey, if they are willing to do commercials, they have to be legitimate, right? Well, that does work and that does help, and that's important. Consumers need to see your brand multiple times to be able to convert and build brand awareness and build confidence and trust. So awareness is very important for starting that process. And building campaigns that are focused on that are critical if you've already got a built out strategy that's focused on conversions. So we'll get a little bit more into that later. Next, you've got consideration. So that consumer is no longer just doing their normal day-to-day. They're actually now starting to decide which products or which brands they actually want to be going after and buying. So think about it, they're searching maybe dog treats, they're searching more generic, but they're trying to gather more research. And then we have conversion. So this is one of the most critical ones, especially if you're focused on profitability, especially if you have a limited budget, but making sure that when that consumer is ready to purchase, your ads are showing up within those terms, those aisles that that consumer is searching for. So think about Amazon as a grocery store. It's got digital shelves similar to when you walk into a grocery store. You're trying to vie for that placement where they're gonna see you the most. And that's what you're ultimately doing within Amazon ads. The last approach that we have is loyalty and defensive targeting. So these are consumers who are already familiar with your brand, who've likely already purchased from your brand, and you're trying to make sure that you keep them as loyal consumers and or you're defending your territory that you've essentially built on Amazon. One of the main reasons why consumers go to Amazon is to purchase from a new brand and discover new brands. So the argument of not advertising on your own branded searches, I can completely understand, but I counter that every time with the argument that consumers are on Amazon to buy based off of star ratings, number of reviews, and price point. So if you have a consumer who's searching after your brand, don't let somebody who has a higher star rating than you, who has a lower price point than you, show up on your searches. So what are some of the reasons why it may be important to define your objectives? One of the biggest ones is to define what your assortment is. Your assortment nowadays is very important for defining which products you're gonna actually put in which area of the funnel and what those ad campaigns are gonna do. So previously, if you've been selling on Amazon for a long time, you may remember being able to bid below $1 easily, advertise your entire assortment, you'd be able to hit your profitability goals. With the rising cost per clicks, that's not achievable anymore. You have to define the right assortment for each of these goals that we've talked about, and then create the strategy that will meet that. So with one of the brands that we manage, we go very aggressively after the awareness and consideration sections of the funnel, but we only do that with 2 of their products. Why? Because they're proven products, they have a high number of reviews, and we know that consumers love these products. The rest of it, we focus on other areas of the funnel. So what about the ad types that are available for you? Understanding your ad type is important for really 3 different reasons. Each ad has different placements that are available both on and off of Amazon. So if you're trying to reach consumers both on and off Amazon, you need to understand which ads will actually do that. They also meet consumers in different areas of the funnel. So let's take a step back and talk about those objectives. You define your objective. If you're going after awareness, you want ads that are then going to meet that consumer in the awareness side of the funnel. And then the last one is how consumers interact with them. A lot of the ads on Amazon allow the consumer to be driven directly into the product detail page, but ads like sponsored brand ads allow you to drive that consumer into your brand store, which may give them more options. So imagine that you're selling blankets and you have multiple different blanket types, and the consumer is not really sure on what type of blanket that they want to buy. That's a good opportunity to drive them into your brand store where you have different blanket options that they can then choose which blanket actually applies to them. Do they want a cable knit? Do they want a Sherpa lined blanket? You give them the option, they have a higher likelihood to convert. So to quickly cover each of the ad types that are available, we've got sponsored product ads, which you can actually see right here. This is a sponsored product ad. And sponsored product ads consume about 70% of all spend on Amazon. So it's definitely the go-to lever It's generally focused on the lowest section of the funnel, and you can target consumers not only through keywords, which is very important because that is one of the most common ways consumers are finding products. They're searching a query, they're browsing the search results, and then they're buying a product. You can also target specific products. So if you start finding products that you want to go after, well then you can add these into a sponsored products campaign and target those directly. This is really good for conquesting, and while sponsored display, which we're going to talk about in a second, also allows you to do product targeting, they have different placements. So this again goes back to understanding what those placements are. We don't have enough time today to go through each of these placements. I would love to, but we don't have the time. But it's important knowing where those placements show up. Next, we have sponsored brand campaigns. You've probably seen these before. We saw it on some of the slides early on, but those are the banner ads. And why are sponsored brand campaigns important? Because they go after consumers higher up in the funnel. You can still go after consumers lower down in the funnel, but they're intended for brand building. They're intended for brand awareness. And really in the consideration side of the funnel, that's where we see them shine. So you get not only a custom creative that you can use your logo, you can choose 3 different products that are on it. You can also now run sponsored brand video ads, which allow you to run videos that will inform the consumer. Best practices are to keep those videos to about 15 seconds. But we find that we have high engagement rate in those. So if you have a technical product, you have a product where you need to kind of explain it to the consumer, definitely highly recommended that you use sponsored brand video ads for that. And then the last one is within sponsored brands, you can also utilize Store Spotlight. So if you're not familiar with Store Spotlight, what it allows you to do is create a banner ad where you get to feature 3 different sections of your brand store for that consumer. So let's say they know that you sell throw blankets, but they don't know that you sell comforters. They don't know that you sell sheet sets. Well, you can have throw blankets as one of the sections, and then add adjacent categories that consumer can now see and navigate towards. And then last but not least, we have sponsored display. That is at least in the Amazon advertising console. Sponsored display is one of the ad types that I personally am most bullish on. If you've heard of Amazon DSP or the demand side platform, this is a high investment type of advertising lever that's available generally for those brands who are already crushing it, who already have their advertising campaigns optimized within the Amazon advertising console. So one of the challenges is, historically, you're looking at a $20,000 plus minimum to run an Amazon DSP campaign. And quite frankly, not a lot of brands can support that, at least out the gate. So sponsored display has been something that Amazon's been focused on a lot this last year. And what they've done is they've built out a lot of the different targeting and feature sets that historically have been available in Amazon DSP within sponsored display. Some examples of that are, we can now go after Amazon audiences. What that allows you to do is it allows you to engage specific curated audiences that Amazon has made based on all of their data that they have, and reach those consumers not only on Amazon, like we see traditionally with sponsored products and sponsored brands, but also off of Amazon. So now you can start going after that consumer once they leave the marketplace and continue to re-engage them and ultimately try and drive them back into the funnel. And then we're not going to cover it today, but there is also Amazon DSP programmatic advertising that allows you to reach consumers through not only display advertising, but video advertising and audio advertising. So let's talk about keywords and bidding approaches. So selecting the right keywords is very important. It's very much like shooting at a target when it comes to selecting the right keywords and the right bidding approach. So you're not necessarily going to be able to get to the right graph right away, or the right target, and be profitable. But in general, you want to kind of follow this approach. If you start shooting from the hip, you start not having a targeted approach, what you're going to start seeing is you're going to be in this lose money bucket, okay? As you start developing your strategy, or if you enter with a strategy, you're ideally moving closer towards the profitable bucket, and you might be in the break-even bucket. But the goal is we want everybody to end up within the profitable bucket. That's your goal, that's our goal, and that's really what everybody should be focused on. So how do you get to that? Well, it starts with choosing the right keywords. So when you choose the right keywords, you have to remember how consumers are shopping. They're shopping by either finding your product in the deals section or by search, find, buy. So keep that in mind. A customer is inserting a query, they're being served all these different ad slots, they're being served all these different organic slots and curated slots. So you have to be able to choose the right keyword where you have the highest relevancy. Why is relevancy important? Because Amazon uses relevancy to decide what listing or what advertisement they're going to actually display when that consumer searches that query. So yes, if you're selling jeans, you want to go ahead and target jeans related keywords, but you don't necessarily want to go after jeans right away. The reason why you don't want to do that is because if you don't have a listing that has high reviews that can compete against everybody else who's organically showing up in jeans, who is also showing up within ads, you're not going to convert and your relevancy is going to go down, which is going to drive your cost per clicks up and or decrease the likelihood of Amazon serving your ad within that search term. So choosing the right keywords is very important. And when you're getting started, you really want to go after keywords that are highly relevant to you, not necessarily driving the highest amount of volume. There is a caveat that I will say to that. If you have a product that has 5-star reviews, that maybe doesn't have thousands of reviews, but you're absolutely crushing the price point within that search term, you probably can go ahead and go after that search term. Why? Because consumers are shopping off of reviews, number of reviews, and then price point. So just some tips real quick. When it comes to choosing your keywords, we have 4 kind of key areas to focus on. So when you choose your keyword, understand the search volume. Use a tool like Helium 10, use a tool like Jungle Scout, estimate what the search volume is when you're choosing those keywords. Next, understand your competition within those keywords. So it's not just who's competing, but who's advertising, what's their price point, how many reviews do they have. Put yourself in the consumer shoes. If I search this term, would I buy my product? If the answer is no, you probably don't have a good relevancy score. And then we talked about it, understand advertising. So if you have share of voice data available, it's very important to take a look at this. We highly recommend this because it tells you who's advertising in there and who you're actually going to be competing against. So your competitors are not only the listings that show up organically, but also who is actually competing for that bid. And then lastly, we talked about this, but understand your relevancy. Relevancy is king on Amazon. You need to make sure that you're relevant in those search results. So when it comes to bidding, how do we define bids? So it circles back to your objective. If your objective is awareness, then you're going to want to go after bids that are at the top of the search. How do you find out what that bid is? If you go into the ad console on Amazon and you create a campaign, you can drop in a keyword for those products and Amazon gives you a suggested bid range. So that's always a good start to take a look at it. Amazon's giving you real data that they have, and nothing's better than the data that Amazon provides. You know, there are fantastic tool providers out there, but at the end of the day, they're using third-party data. So trust and rely on Amazon data more so than anything else. That's our recommendation. If you don't have that data, definitely take a look at those tools. Directionally, they're accurate. They're going to tell you which keywords are actually going to cost you more. So taking a look at those will help you kind of choose where you want to end up. If you're going after something that's profitable and profitability is your focus, you're not going to want to bid top of search. You're going to want to start off more in the middle of the ground, see how your results go, and then measure those. So moving into targeting and retargeting, consumers are finding products through search, which is why we talk about keywords. But what happens after that consumer has started searching? They start ending up on product detail pages. So this is where product targeting and retargeting come into play, because once a consumer is on a product detail page, you can come up with targeting strategies that will allow you to go after those consumers based on what category they're shopping in, based on specific ASINs that you want to go after, and it's very powerful. So let's do a little bit of framing. Imagine that you're selling a luxury watch, right? What do you think would happen if you bid on the term watch on Amazon? Anybody? It's not going to work out well, right? Probably not going to convert. But what if you're a Rolex and you're targeting and you're going after consumers who are shopping for Chanel, or vice versa? Your likelihood of converting goes up because that consumer now is more within your demographic that you want to be targeting. So this is where targeting becomes critical. If you're a premium brand, targeting is one of your go-to strategies. If you're not a premium brand, targeting is still very important because if you're conquesting. So let's say that you know that there's a brand out there, you have a better product, you have a better price point, you have better reviews. Utilizing targeting will allow you to show up on their product detail pages so when consumers are ready to purchase, they see an item that is a better value for them. Going back to what they're searching for, better reviews, better price. So it ends up becoming a win-win at that point. Next, we've got retargeting. So if you have a D2C site, I'm sure you've heard about an abandoned cart and how important that is on your D2C site. Well, we don't get that on Amazon, but next best thing, we get to retarget consumers. So we get to retarget consumers not only who are on your product detail page, who have seen it and didn't end up purchasing, but you can also target your competitors based on if they viewed the product. One other thing within retargeting is Amazon has now released purchases retargeting. So why would you want to retarget somebody after they've made a purchase? Probably asking that. Well, let's say you're selling a product, a camera, and you have different lenses, you have different accessories. Well, they bought the camera, let's retarget that consumer with our lenses. Let's retarget that consumer with the accessories because they likely need something else to go with that purchase. So there are different ways that you can deploy that depending upon what product type you sell and depending, again, about what your objective is. All right, time for a little Wheel of Fortune. So you're probably wondering, why are we looking at Wheel of Fortune? We're not home, it's not 7 o'clock at night. I know, I'm not Pat Sajak. But with that said, the point is that when it comes to advertising, when you have no data, you have to guess this, right? And your actual chance of getting it right is pretty low. So what happens when you get a little bit of data? It becomes a little bit easier, right? So now you can start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. There we go. Little shameless plug here. Channel key. So when it comes to metrics and reporting, going back to your objectives is important. When you define your objectives, you're defining your KPIs. And your KPIs are important because when it comes to measuring and the reporting that you have for those KPIs, you need to be looking at the right metrics. If you're in awareness and you're focused on your ROAS, you're not looking at the right metrics. So understanding those, measuring those is one of the keys to success. We don't have the time to go into each of the metrics and what we would do, but after my speech, if you have any questions, you want to come chat with me about some KPIs that you should be focused on, I'll tell you where our booth is. You can come have a chat. So, as Winston Churchill famously said, to improve is to change, to perfect is to change often. It's not just about reporting, it's not just about metrics, it's not just about your advertising strategy, but it's about how you optimize. How do you learn? What are the changes that you make? Why do you make those changes? So, optimization is key. You should be looking at your ad campaigns every day. You shouldn't necessarily be making changes every day. You want to have enough data to influence those changes. What we recommend at Channel Key is allowing any wholesale changes to take anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks to allow those changes to come to life. Or you receive enough data to make an informed decision. You don't want to react because you spent $15 and you haven't converted. You do want to react if you've had 50 clicks and you haven't converted. So understanding what your thresholds are very important, and then making those optimizations towards, again, circling back, what your objectives are, will be the keys to success on Amazon. So you have to understand your KPIs, you have to understand what's influencing those, and then you have to optimize towards those to be successful. What we're not talking about as well is the best-in-class Amazon listings and being retail ready. So it's not just about advertising. If you're not converting well, take a look at your listings, make sure they're geared for conversions, you have great images, you have great reviews. It's very important that you understand what the consumer is actually looking at once they land. So to wrap up, some proof of success, really some of the results that we've had. We had a client who was selling live plants. Yes, you heard that right, live plants on Amazon. I didn't know it until we saw them, but it's interesting. The challenge that they had is that they were underperforming on Amazon and they needed to optimize their catalog. They had an unoptimized catalog. Their advertising approach was not really intentional. As I've heard, it's accidental e-commerce. But their products were ranking really well. So how did they get the extra oomph out of that? So we created a strategic business plan that outlined how we were going to optimize their catalog, how we were going to create ad campaigns and the logic that we were using behind it. Once we agreed on that, we then implemented that campaign. So what does that mean? It means that we optimized 175 listings. We created 56 plus A+ content pages. We created an advertising approach that not only met the consumer at the top of search, but also drove them into our brand store. And these are the results that you see. So within the 1 month, their busiest month of the season year over year, we grew their sales 268%. And that's just outstanding. So from that, we also increased our conversion rate. Oh, sorry. Clicked a little bit off there. My apologies. Let's take a step back. But also we increased their conversion rates 4.94%. So it's not just about having the right approach, but it's also having best-in-class listings. That's why we believe in full-service channel management. So in summary, really to run a proper Amazon business, it comes down to planning. It comes down to understanding what your objectives are, which ad types you're going to need to use, what keywords you're going to go after. So if you have any other questions, feel free to stop by. If you've been keeping an eye on me, our booth is actually right here. So we're not too far away. Stop by, ask any questions that you have. Otherwise, thank you for taking the time to sit down, listen to what I had to say, and I'll open it up to any questions.